Hi everyone, welcome to Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I've had 2 home births in April 2020 and in June 2023. I'm a mental health nurse and an ex-student midwife that has a strong passion for birth and supporting women. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. This is the 7th episode for the Birthing at Home podcast. Part of my hope for this podcast is to share mostly Australian stories of birth at home, but to also gain some perspective by hearing stories from outside of Australia. So I was obviously very keen to listen to our 7th guest, Stacey, who is a New Zealander that has lived in Australia for much of her adult life, but currently lives in New Caledonia with her partner Paul and 4-year-old Aydan. Stacey recently freebirthed her second baby named Atlas in New Caledonia. New Caledonia is a collective of islands in the South Pacific Ocean, which is about 2 hours flight to the east of Queensland. It is a French colony, but the Indigenous people known as the Kanaks have lived on, birthed on, and cared for the islands for about 6,000 years. Welcome, Stacey.
Thanks, Elsie.
Excited to talk to you today because you're actually in New Caledonia, which is, I never thought that I would have someone from New Caledonia reaching out to me. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about who you are, how you ended up in New Caledonia, and about your family?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Stacey. Originally from New Zealand, spent most of my adult life in Western Australia. Met my partner Paul there. He's from New Zealand also, met in Australia. And we've got 2 boys, Aydan, who's 4, and Atlas, who is almost 4 months, I think. I have no idea of the weeks anymore. And we're in New Caledonia. We've been here for just over 2 years, and we're getting ready to leave again soon. We came here. Paul got a job here, and we were sick of being stuck in Australia with COVID. Couldn't go anywhere or do anything. So, we decided to come here while our son was young and, have an experience what it would be like being expats in a foreign country.
Yeah, that's amazing. Are there many New Zealanders, Australians in New Caledonia?
Not so many. We live 3.5 hours from the city, so they call it the bush where we live. There's mines here. There's a few people that come and do shutdowns and whatnot, but not a heap of people, no.
Yeah. And what do you do when you're not otherwise being a mum?
At the moment, just mumming. I don't have a work visa for here, so I'm just staying at home. But before I had my son, I worked in an underground gold mine for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So I did mining, had him, went back for a little bit and then left to come here. But I can't work here, but since having my first son, I was also a CrossFit coach, casually out of interest, and I did some certifications to coach pregnant and postpartum women, and then that's kind of evolved. I've done a matrescence educator course and Dr. Sophie Brock's motherhood studies practitioner course.
Cool.
So I hope to do some more work around in the motherhood space with those eventually. Yeah.
And are you on your way back to Australia, or are you going back to New Zealand? Where are you going?
We don't really know. We're going to go back to Australia, just back to Perth for a couple of weeks to do some life admin, and then we're just going to head to Vietnam for a few months to hang out and decide what's next, because we just don't know. We don't want to make any big decisions without having some downtime to consider where we want to end up. So
absolutely, that's really cool. Your first baby, Aydan, he was born in Kalgoorlie. Oh my gosh, that's so difficult. Kalgoorlie. Is that right?
Yes, he was born there.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll give you a brief overview. Atlas is making some noises. So I was kind of the first out of my main circle of friends to have a baby. So we lived in a regional town, so they just had the public hospital. I had private health insurance, so it was the classic, oh, I've had this health insurance, so might as well get a private obstetrician. So I had a private OB in a public hospital. My pregnancy was really smooth sailing. It was fine. Went into spontaneous labour at 37 plus 1. Which I was not ready for at all. I'd just finished work. I'd had a week doing nothing, and then I was going to get into preparing for the baby the next week, and then he decided to come. So I definitely wasn't prepared. I hadn't packed a bag. I went to the hospital to confirm it was my waters had broken, and they were like, yeah, you're having contractions. You can stay the night if you want. I was like, oh, no way. I've got to go home and get ready. And they said, come back in the morning. Your OB will meet you here. And then, labour just continued to progress from there, actually. So I got to about 4 a.m. and I was like, do we go to the hospital? What do we do? And I imagined then I was probably coming up towards transition. And then got to the hospital and they were like, oh, well, go to a examination room or whatever, not the labour suite, but I could barely walk. And then they were like, okay, I think we need to go to the labour suite. And I think I was about 8 centimetres. But then, it kind of, slowed down a bit from there. On reflection, I can see the fear, tension, pain triangle playing out. Then I ended up with an episiotomy, vacuum assistance for him to be born. But that was, about less than 3 hours actually in total by the time I went back to the hospital. Yeah. So, pretty quick. Wow. And it was intense. It wasn't, it was okay. There's just a lot happened that I just wasn't prepared for.
And was Aydan able to, if it happened a bit sooner than you sort of anticipated, was Aydan able to be there? Not Aydan, Paul, your partner.
Sorry.
Aydan was on his way.
Yes. No. Cool. So Paul was there. We lived residentially. We worked residentially.
Cool.
So he was there. We had. I didn't really believe that I was going to have a baby within the day. So I messaged one friend, and I didn't even tell my mum I was in labour or anything because I didn't believe it was actually going to happen.
37 plus 1. That's wow. What was your postpartum like after Aydan?
It was good. I was really well looked after in the hospital. I was fortunate that I had a friend who was just doing her midwifery training, so she looked after me really well. The midwives were fantastic. I had lots of, my mum was living in the same town as us, my mum and younger sister, so I had lots of help from them, and it was, really quite smooth sailing.
Yeah. That's great. And in the pregnancy with Aydan, did you do any birth classes or education kind of stuff?
Not really, no. I was very much you can't plan, people say you can't plan for birth. You've just got to go with the flow. So that, I'm just going to go with the flow. Just going to go and have a baby. I did start, I had some hypnobirthing videos, and the day that I had gone in the afternoon before my waters broke, I had actually watched a couple of episodes, but that was going to be my, that's what I was going to watch when I was on my maternity leave before the baby. So I did watch one particular episode that day about breathing. So when I was in the shower at home, I was telling my partner, I need to breathe like this. So he was helping me coach me through that. But no, I did the hospital antenatal class, which is, fairly uninformative. They just show you all the instruments that they could use to get your baby out, and you learn how to change your nappy and swaddle a baby, and not ideal. But I was pretty oblivious to the birth world prior to having him.
You're definitely not alone. So I'm sure you know that now, but that's a very common experience for most first-time mums. So then I assume when did you go to New Caledonia? 2 years ago?
Yeah, so our
2021.
2021, yep. So our son was almost 2 when we moved here.
Yep. And had you thought, after having Aydan and maybe thinking, if I have another baby, like where I would like to birth or how I would like my experience to go, had you thought much about that?
Yeah, I had. So I think birth time must have come out a little bit just after he had been born. So I went and watched that. And then I met some new mum friends. Some were midwives, some had home births, some had C-sections, and they were going to have a be back at home next time. So I was exposed to a lot more people. And really just after I had him, it opened my eyes, and I was much more interested in birth and motherhood and all those things. So before we moved here, we were packing up all of our stuffs in a container in Perth, and I said, I had all the baby stuff. I was like, we're not going to have another baby in 2 years, are we? And I really couldn't see myself having another baby with this 2-year-old. He was, it was just pretty full on, the toddler life. So all my beautiful baby stuff sitting in a storage container. And then once we got here, our life it's really slow and really calm, and it's really nice. And I was like, I could have a baby here. So we hadn't planned to have, we hadn't planned to have one here, but I'm happy that we have.
Of course. And so you arrive in New Caledonia, you find out you're pregnant. Did you know much about the maternity system or what is on offer in New Caledonia?
Not so much. So when I arrived here, I was fortunate to meet another, she's from France, but she lives here, another friend who was... They
speak French in New Caledonia, right?
It's so French, governed by France, So I met her, and she was pregnant with her second, and she was really into birth, so she kind of filled me in about the birth space, but I didn't know too much. Then once I knew that I wanted a home birth before becoming pregnant. And so, then I talked to her, and she's like, you can't actually have a home birth here. And I was like, fantastic. Okay, what are we going to do? So there's just one doula that I know of. She's in the city, which is 3.5 hours from us. So I did a meeting with her, and just to explore my options, to understand more about, there's a maternity hospital where we are in our town. There's one in the city, and there's also they call it the clinic. I think it's similar to a birth centre maybe, but they still have doctors there. I was just learning about my options, and she said, well, I actually support people to have their babies at home. I just don't attend the birth, because she also attends births in hospital, and she's got, I don't know, some kind of professional certification, I guess, so she can't actually help them at home. But she's like, I've had my babies at home. I think last year she supported 8 or 10 couples that had their babies at home, and I was like, okay, fantastic. I didn't realize this was an option. Well, of course you can have your baby anywhere, but I didn't really think about it. So I came back home, and I said to my partner, all right, we can have our baby at home. He says, great, will she come? And I said, no, it's just going to be me and you.
That's great.
And he was like, I'm not sure about that. Because initially he was even hesitant about home birth, because he's like, I don't understand how, because the study, that big study that it says it's safer for, or better outcomes for second-time mothers to birth at home, the same outcomes for babies than in hospital. And he's like, I just don't understand how it can be safer or better for you at home, not in the hospital. So we just did a heap of education. I told him about that research paper. I joked to my mum, I said, I'm just going to go buy a kids paddling pool, and we're just going to have the baby at home. And she's like, you're not going to do that.
That's so good.
So I just kind of, led us on this path of, I just spent so much time learning, listening. I still went to the hospital here for my prenatal appointments. I went to the doctor. It's a fragmented system, so you see a midwife during pregnancy, but she doesn't actually work on the ward. So you'd see. So the first appointment we had at the hospital, I asked all about their maternity ward and how everything happens, but it's very we didn't speak. I still don't speak great French. The midwife didn't speak good English, so there was never any in-depth conversations. It was very much broken languages. It was just very surface level. But I got to see the maternity ward, and they had like a lovely labour room. They had a bath in there, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I've got a bath. Because I was still open to whatever options. I wasn't set on having the baby, a free birth. And then I said, that looks nice. And the midwife's like, yeah, and then this room next door, this is where you deliver your baby. I said, oh, so you can't have your baby in the bath. You can't, this room was really nice. And then the delivery room's this really clinical, bright lights, steel benches, just a bed.
What?
And I was like, what if you don't make it there? And she's like, oh, it's better for everyone if you make it there. And I was
my God.
I was like, right. I was like, so it would have really depended on, what midwife you had on the day, whether she would allow you to stay in the lovely room or move you to the delivery room, it was called. Not even the birth room. I said to my partner, I was like, that midwife, she was really lovely and she spoke perfect English, so it was nice. But she was like, all right, see you in June. I'd never see her for the rest of my pregnancy. And I said, oh, she was nice. The room was nice. And he said, yeah, but remember, she works for the hospital. She doesn't work for you. And I was like, yeah, this is right. I kept going to the appointments. They were never fantastic. Kept going with questions each time because we were listening to the Great Birth Rebellion podcast. So each time I'd have questions come up, I'd ask them about continuous monitoring, about managed third stage and all the things. And then even when I asked about the continuous monitoring, she went off on a big rant and it was all in French, but I heard dead baby come up a few times and I was like, wow,
geez.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I continued, going to those appointments, asking the questions and then just really not enjoying them. But in that time I did a birth prep chat with a midwife in Australia and I said, do you know much? I explained to her the system here and I said, what are my chances of having a physiological birth in this hospital? And she said, I'm going to be really honest, you're fucked. And I was like, okay. And it's what I needed to hear, right? So was like, oh, I could come and support you. And I was like, that would be incredible. But you don't have to. And we kind of talked back and forward. But then in the end, she couldn't come. It didn't work, the timing with her family. But I didn't realize the confidence and the belief that it had given me. Because when she was like, yeah, I'd come and support you. I told her about my first birth. And she's like, you could have probably had your baby at home if you had stayed at home. And she just really had a lot of belief in me. And then when she said she couldn't come, I barely slept that night. And I was up researching about free birth. And I'd never really explored it seriously too much. Then I came across Freebirth Society, which I'd never heard of before, but then so I saw that website and they had a course and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I asked a few people that I knew if they'd heard of it. They hadn't, but then someone else on Instagram who I've done a course with, she messaged me something about birth and she's like, oh, my friend's done this Freebirth Society course. And I was like, oh, I just saw that a couple of days ago, actually. So then they had a sale on, so I was like, okay, I'm going to buy this. This is a sign. And we explored other. I started that course. I listened to a heap of podcasts. We thought about going because we're from New Zealand. We could go and birth in New Zealand. They have a free home birth system. We could go to Australia, get a private midwife, but none of it really felt right to me. I could see my baby. I could see myself having my baby at home here where we live, and my partner was like, wherever you feel safest is what we can do. It'll be difficult. We've got to work out the timings, have to get a rental house, a car, all the things. He said, but we can make whatever work. But none of it really felt right to me. I wanted to have my baby here at my house. So I don't know if I told too many people that, but I kind of went through all the options and then we were like, no, we're doing this ourselves. And my mum, I asked my mum to come over and help us with our just help us in the postpartum period and help like taking my son to school and stuff. And then she had like was like, please don't birth at home. Like she was worried, but I said to her, like, this is what we're doing. You're welcome to be here, but like you can't bring your fear into the birth space. And yeah, she was a bit like, oh, okay. But when she arrived, she listened to podcasts with me. She read part of Rhea Dempsey's book. Like everything I asked her to like look into, she did. Like, so yeah, it was incredible.
Oh, that is so nice. Yeah, what a great support. Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I've got 2 sisters and a brother. So my older sister has had 3 kids.
Yeah.
The other younger ones, no.
Did they, your siblings that had children, like, did they have any comments on the whole thing?
Not really, just kind of. Yeah, not really that I know of. I don't think people understood when I said we're planning to birth at home. I don't think people didn't really know that we weren't having a midwife because they all know home birth with a midwife. So I think, a lot of people didn't actually realise unless they're like, oh, the midwife will come to you. And I was like, no, it's just me, Paul and mum. So, they didn't really know but to be honest, I didn't really tell a lot of people either because I didn't want their negative, uneducated, more than often comments.
Opinions.
I was investing a lot of my time and energy into this and I knew it was right for us. So, I didn't really tell too many people.
That's brilliant. And so when you went to the appointments at hospital and stuff, so did you have any scans or any, like, did you decline anything or?
Yes. So they have, I conversed with the doula a bit to find out like what I had to do or what they expect someone to do in a pregnancy and what ones like I could turn down easily. So, when I first went, she did a ultrasound when I was like 7 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And vaginal ultrasound, I was very surprised. Because I'd never had one before. I was like, okay, sure, maybe because I'm so early. And then I went back at 11 weeks and she's like, oh, have a look at the baby. And then I was like, all right, abdominally. She's like, no, vaginally. I was like, 11 weeks. I was like, no, just abdominally, thanks. And I said, if you can't see it, it doesn't matter. Like, there must be something wrong if you can't see the baby at 11 weeks. And yes, she could see it perfectly fine. Heard the heartbeat. It was perfect. And I went for my 12 or 13 or I think the timings are a bit different here. Maybe, 12-week scan. At somewhere else. It was with another midwife, but she does scans. They do a lot of stuff here. I'm still unsure of the system, to be honest. And then my partner came with me, and then she was like, all right, take your pants off. And I was like, another vaginal one?
Oh, my God.
I was like, what?
What?
And my partner's like, you don't have to, Stacey, whatever you're comfortable with. And I said to her, like, we were trying to converse in French. And I was like, what do you normally do? And she's like, I normally do it vaginally. And I said, well, I just want like the best. I want her to be able to get the best pictures and numbers or whatever she needs. So if that's how she normally works, let's do it that way because it'll be, done. And then she couldn't get what she needed, so then had to do it abdominally anyway.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, it was just like bizarre. I was like, I've never had one of these ever, and now I've had 2.
Oh, my God.
So, that was fine. Then they do the 20-week scan, did that one, and then they also do a 3rd trimester one too.
Yeah.
And I said to the doula, do I need that? Because what are they really looking for? It's not going to change anything of my decisions. And she said, it's just better if you do it because if you do present to hospital, like they might not treat you very nicely if you haven't complied to all the testings and stuff. So did the 3rd trimester one and I just feel like, my baby was fine. I was just checking the box. I wasn't concerned about any of the things they were checking. Like they were like, it looks great. And I was like, I know. And then I did turn down the glucose testing. I did like one fasted blood test. I turned down the GBS swab. The GBS swab. I told her I wasn't going to do it because I said, what's happening at the next appointment? And she said, you'll do the GBS. And I was like, that's not for me, thank you. And she left it.
Yeah.
And then I turned up again and she's like, all right, the swab. And I was like, I'm not doing it, thanks. And
oh my
she's
God.
telling me all about it in French. And I said, thank you, I'm not going to do it. And she really couldn't understand why I didn't want to do it. But I just I couldn't explain in French. Yeah. So I was just like, no. I had to say no about 7 times. And I was like, no. And then they also they do blood test for toxoplasmosis every month, which is like what you get from like cat poo, like if you change cat litter, you know who not me to do that.
Oh yeah.
And also raw meat, because they eat like a lot of like undercooked meat. And so they wanted to do a blood test every month for that. And I just thought, I'm really not at high risk of that. I don't have a cat. I don't eat raw meat. And I had my 2-year-old or 3-year-old, he was then. Like I had him at home full time, and sometimes you'd wake up to an hour or 2 for blood tests. And I was like, I just don't want to do it. So
no.
She kept trying to, each time she's like, are you going to do it? And I said, if I choose to go to other bloods, I'll do it at the same time because I'm there, but I'm not going especially to do this blood test.
Yeah. Not every month. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, I know. And even before I was pregnant, when we knew we wanted to start trying, I went to the doctor to request some bloods because I have I can't remember what it's called, hemochromatosis. My body stores too much iron, and I wanted to check my iron level and a few other like vitamins and things. And it was the doctor really didn't want to give me the referral to get my iron tested and she wouldn't give me some other bloods. So I really struggled to get bloods before I was pregnant, and then as soon as I was pregnant, they couldn't they just wanted to take blood out of me every month,
all the time. Oh
yeah.
Oh, it's so inconsistent.
Yeah, it's just funny. And because I was looking at Australian research, and then it is very different to what the French had. And she was just the midwife that I saw throughout. She was just like, oh, here we go again. What's she going to say no to? Yeah. But yeah, we just couldn't have a good conversation about it. So at the end, I was just like, no, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, that's probably worked out for the best, really.
Yeah.
Because and I'm sure at some point she's probably just been like, oh, this person does not speak French. Like, why even bother?
When she was passionate about something, she would just go on and on. I was like, I can't actually understand what you're saying. So yeah, I did all those tests. Gosh. And then there was also, you had to go do a meeting with the anaesthetist at 37 weeks to sign a consent form for the epidural. What? And I was like, I understand they want all your health information, whatever, before in case you need it. But in my mind, I'm like, what kind of, what impression is that leaving in women's heads that I've already signed this consent form just in case because I'm going to need it probably. And I was just really like, I just really didn't agree with that appointment, but I went along, I took my partner, and I thought maybe because it was like a specialist that comes up or a consultant to fill the role, and I thought, maybe they'll speak good English and we can have a decent conversation. This man was about 80 and didn't speak any English. So
what the heck?
He spoke Spanish, so he was speaking some Spanish to us, and we don't speak Spanish.
What?
So anyway, my partner came and he has the consent form, and the doctor's like, okay, so sign here. And we're like, oh, no, thank you. We don't want it. And he kept asking, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And my partner's going, yep, we're sure. She's done it before. She doesn't need it. She's strong. No, thank you. Blah, blah, blah. We walked away not signing the consent form, and him just thinking, because the epidural rate, I think in the French system, it's 80%, and I think in New Caledonia, it's 90%.
No wonder you're signing your life away at 37 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Yeah. So you're going through all of this and continuously, I guess, listening to them explain in French, but also picking up on the fearful vibes that they're for sure giving off. Like, did that make you question your decisions, or did that instill any fear in yourself or in Paul?
No, it didn't instill any fear. Sometimes, like when we left that anaesthetist appointment, I was like, so what happens? What if, because I wasn't, like, we did a birth map, and, you know, I thought if I had been in labour for 2 days, I might want to go to the hospital and have an epidural. Like, I wasn't completely against it. And I thought, what if we do turn up there and I actually want one, Paul? And he's like, it'll be okay. It'll just take longer, or they'll do a spinal, or what they'll do, like it'll take longer to recover from, like you won't be able to get up and walk as fast or whatever. He said, they're not going to turn you down for what you need. Like, it's going to be like, he had the most belief in me. And so after that appointment, I was like, oh, but what if I do need it? And I was quite set in my decision. So I can only imagine how it makes other women feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, no fear. Like, I really didn't have any fears. The biggest fear was actually having to go to hospital.
Yeah.
Like presenting to hospital.
I think I read something on Instagram the other day that, you know, they were saying, like, what was your biggest fear? And my response was like having to go to hospital. That's my biggest fear. And just being transferred for something silly or whatever. But wow, I can't like, I am shocked by some of the things you've just said. But I do know in Australia, you know, the relationships that midwives, like private midwives, independent midwives, like make with hospitals are very important, because like, I haven't experienced it, but I have heard of other, especially the midwives experiencing it. Like, you know, when they transfer a woman from birthing at home to hospital, they can get a bit of judgment from the, you know, the doctors and the medical midwives. And I find that just so sad. Yeah.
I think it's very much the same here. Like, it's particularly like if I had gone and I hadn't consented to the epidural, then if I had asked for one. And my friend has told me some other stories about her friends who have birthed here, and one of them turned down the epidural for quite a while, and then eventually she had one, and then the doctor was just like, oh, you should have just had it, you know, 2 hours ago when I told you to. Like, just a lot of just not trusting the woman. And that's also the doula said, like, if you don't do, so I did do the last toxoplasmosis blood test and something else, because she said if you do decide to go to hospital, at least you've ticked those boxes and they're not going to have anything to hold against you.
Actually, I do remember with Frankie, who was born in June, with the glucose tolerance stuff, I wanted to decline that, and I easily declined it, but I'm pretty sure I was told that, like, at least consider having the HbA1c, like the average blood BGL kind of test, just that one blood test, just so that, you know, they can't pin it on you if you have a big baby and you haven't had testing and say, oh, well, she must have had undiagnosed gestational diabetes. But I just thought, oh, that's like, I'm just appeasing the system. I'm not in line with that. But,
many things I did just to appease the system. And then, you know, many things I didn't as well. But I kind of chose, like, I picked and chose the ones that felt right for me. Like, some of them were easier to just do, but then, like, my partner was like, why don't you just do the glucose testing? I said, no, because it has follow-on, or the GBS, or one of them. I was like, it has follow-on effects. It's not just about the test. It's like, what will happen if I do test positive? I think maybe the GBS. If I do test positive, then they give me antibiotics, and I might not actually even have it when I give birth. And so I was like, those ones that had follow-on effects, I declined, or like chose, I thought about what I was saying yes and no to.
Yeah, pick your battles kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so when did you go into labour with Atlas then?
Okay, so 39 weeks, 39, I don't know, plus one, I think. So, I had Aydan he was born on 37 plus 2, and that's the day that my mum arrived from Australia, and I was like, I knew I'd be on edge from that timing, and I knew I could have, 5 more weeks to go, but I knew that, so I kind of, keep telling myself that. So, my partner went and picked up Mum because it was like a 3-hour drive and I didn't want to go in the car for the whole day. So he's like, just stay on the couch, don't do anything. And then, it was a really long couple of weeks. And then the day that I went into labour, I was just like, this baby's never coming, which is ridiculous because I was only 39 weeks and I know that. But it was 2 weeks longer than Aydan. And I had bought B from Core and Flora store. I bought her Preparing Your Pelvic Space for Birth or something, like a webinar. And I was like, this baby's never coming, so I might as well watch this and, learn some more stuff because I kind of just stopped by then. And then I had been losing some mucus like for 2 weeks consistently each day, but no blood or anything. And then that afternoon I went to the toilet and there was some blood in the mucus and I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't say anything to my partner or Mum because everyone would have known. I just didn't want to make it a thing. And then we're getting my son ready for bed and it was about 8:30 and then I picking up some toys in the shower and I bent over and my waters broke. And it's the same as when I went into labour with Aydan. I bent over to pick up a sheet and my waters broke. And they broke like on the movies. It was, I said, people worry about their waters breaking and making a massive mess. Like this, it just would not stop coming out. Wow.
And so you were in the shower.
Yeah, so I cracked up and I was like, Paul, and he said, what? I said, my waters are broken. They're like, you're kidding. And I was just so everyone was in the bathroom and I was like, okay, get out. We have an ensuite. So I was trying to go to the ensuite to have a shower and I couldn't even go there because this water just would not stop coming out. And I was like, okay, I'll shower in here. And everyone's in there. I'm like, everyone get out. This is probably my last time to have a shower by myself for a while. And Paul and Mum had a big list I had laminated a list of what they need to do once I go into labour. So they were straight onto this list and they were running around doing all their jobs. But I was like, calm down. It could still be another day. It could be a really long time yet. So I have a shower. Then I try to walk to my bathroom. The water is still just coming out. So I'm walking with a towel in between my legs to my bathroom. And then, I put a pad on and they had put a cover on our bed and put an old sheet on top and Paul had candles lit, music on, everything was ready enough. But I was like, come on guys, it could be a really long time. But they were fantastic.
And so was Aydan in bed at this point?
No, he was still up and then we put him to bed. We've got our bed on the floor, then he's got a bed next to it as well as his bedroom. So I just lay with him and we put him to sleep in our bed and then I continued. Then I turned on this webinar that I'd bought. So Aydan was asleep. We all kind of went to bed to try and rest. I was watching this webinar.
Did your contractions start after your waters had broken?
Yeah, they did, but it was just very mild. And then I was watching this thing, and then I was kind of looking at the clock, and I could they were very manageable, but I was noticing them. And it was about every 5 minutes, and then it got to a point where I was like, okay, I've got to stop watching this. And then my partner was looking at his clock and he was like, oh, it's about every 4 minutes, huh? And I was like, yeah. We're both looking but not telling each other we were timing it because in my head I was like, I don't want to compare it to my first labour. It could be completely different, but we're both like, oh, what happened last time? What time was that? And it's hard in your head to think differently. But then they just kept getting more and more consistent. They were still manageable. Paul was offering me the shower, the TENS machine, and I was like, no, I'm happy just to lay. And then I sat on the ball for a bit and I went walked up and down the house and I was using the horse's breath that B teaches.
Oh with the lips and stuff.
Yeah, and it was amazing. I thought the contractions were about 20 seconds long. Yeah, is that right? And then but they were over a minute. But they just felt much shorter than what they were because of the breathing. Yeah. And then I think it got to about 1 o'clock. So my waters broke at 8:30, and then 1 o'clock I was like, I might have a shower now. So I had a shower, sat on the ball, had the TENS machine on. And then I was sitting on the ball and Paul was sitting down on the bed, and I was like, it feels so good to know we don't have to go to hospital. Like, it just felt incredible. And I like the car, even in Kalgoorlie, the hospital was 5 minutes away. The car ride was horrendous, and I just felt so at peace with that decision and knowing I didn't have to get in the bloody car.
Murphy's birth, I remember there being a point being like, they will never get me in the back of an ambulance. There's no way I'm getting in a car. Like, like I just can't. I can't imagine how. Like, obviously, women do it all the time, but man, that must be so uncomfortable.
Yeah, and even the hospital here, it's literally only 5 minutes away too.
Yeah.
But I was like, there's no way I would. Yeah, I was just remember sitting on the ball being like, oh, this is incredible. And then I think about 2 a.m. I had another shower and I was like walking in the hallway, and I think Aydan woke up. Okay. And then Mum woke up not long after because she heard Aydan, so she came. Yeah. And we've got like quite a big bedroom, so the pool was set up. We had our bed, then the pool, and then it goes through to our ensuite and wardrobe. So there's plenty of room in there for us all. And then I had another shower, and then I really wanted to get in the pool. Paul took his job very seriously, and we did Rhea Dempsey's Birthing with Intensity, her online. Okay. She does it in person, but she has it via Zoom as well. So we did that weekend course over a weekend. Yep. And they were talking about how the pool isn't for like pain relief. Like, you shouldn't get in there just to relax. It's for the end of labour. And he wouldn't let me in the bloody pool. I was like, I just want to get in the pool. And he's like, not yet, Stacey, not yet. So I kneeled in front of it and had my arms in it, like splashing the water. And I was like, let me in the pool. And he wouldn't let me. So I think I had another shower. And then it was in that shower, because I had read Rhea Dempsey's books and also Dr. Sarah Buckley's Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering, which was like all about the hormones of birth. And I feel like I was like my own doula in my head, because I was in the shower and I was like, it was like my hips were really, really sore. And I was like, even if I were to go to the hospital, what are they going to offer me? I don't want an epidural. I didn't sign the consent form. They've got nothing there that I want. You just need to get through this. Like, it's hard. It's bringing your baby closer. So I was like in my head, and that's the only time where I was probably like, what am I doing? Like, and then I hopped in. I was allowed in the pool after that. And then Aydan hopped in the pool for a while with me as well, because as soon as we set the pool up at like 37 weeks, and I was like, this is going to be a disaster. He's just going to want to play in there. And he did. All he wanted to do was play in there. But, so I was like, you can come in with me if you want. So he hopped in for a while. I think I probably got in the pool about 3 a.m. maybe. And he was in there, but then he was like splashing, and Paul had like an underwater torch, and Aydan's like, let me have the torch and have a look at the big hole.
Oh, that's so funny.
And then, because we talked lots about the birth, we'd watch videos, he watched Birth Time with us, and so he knew lots about it, and he was like, I want to see the big hole. And then I was like, get out, because he was splashing. So he hopped out and just sat on the end of the bed, and then eventually he fell back to sleep actually. But just the water was really nice, but just my hips were like, I could feel before I hopped in the pool, I could like feel my cervix expanding, and I was like, this is really sore. But and because I'd watched B's webinar, and I was like, my baby's starting to come down, and I was like, my body's doing what it needs to do. It's just really hard. And my hips were just killing me in the pool, and then I kept like not yelling, but being loud, and then my partner was like, use low tones, because he'd learned about using low tones, and I'm like, oh, just shut up.
Maybe you should become a doula.
Yeah, he was fantastic. And then he was really great at like bringing me back, like when I'd be like, fuck, this is so hard, like, ow, and he bring me back. But then it got to a point like in between, like the contractions, they were intense, but in between I was getting lots of rest. And I could talk, and it was like, it was a lot calmer than what I we set up the GoPro to be able to see it, and I was like, oh, it actually was really calm, because Mum was like, you were so calm. I was like, it didn't feel like it, but looking back, I was like, oh yeah, it was really quite calm. It was just, it was in my head, was like all the really hard stuff that they couldn't see. I feel my baby coming down, and then I kept doing there was so much pressure in my bum. I was like, I think the baby's coming out my bum. It was so sore.
It's got confused.
I was like, this is really sore. And Paul's like, do you want to have a look? I was like, I know it's not even close yet, but my bum, and I kept doing like little bits of poo. So Paul had the sieve, and he was scooping the poo out. I was like, oh man. And
that's
Mum
all
was
part
like,
of it.
Fine. And then in my head I was like, if there was a midwife here, she'd be saying, we like to see poo because it means the baby's coming. So I was telling myself that in my head, and I was like, just come on, baby. Eventually I could feel like the baby's head was down, and then it was like going back up, and then it would come down, and I was like, okay, it's here. I can feel it. It's so close. And in my first labor, I remember I was on my bed on the back, and I remember them saying, you're going to feel the ring of fire, you're going to feel this. And I was like, I don't want to feel this. Like, that sounds horrendous. And I would have, I was holding back a lot. And then this time I was like, oh, I don't want to think about that again. But from Sarah Buckley's work, when she says, before your baby's head comes out, you'll experience the biggest hit of oxytocin your body will ever experience. And it will get you through that pain part. So in my head, I was like, it's okay that it hurts. Soon it's not going to hurt. I've just got to get to this limit. And I could feel I could feel the coming up and down. We don't know it's a him. And then I felt like the contraction wasn't long enough for him to come out. And then I could feel like I was holding back a bit. So I was like, I just really need to let go and let my body do what it's trying to do. So I had the next contraction came, and I just afterwards I didn't try to relax. I just kind of I don't know how to explain it. I just let my body do what it needed to do, and my whole body shook. And then his head came out, and and then I think in that moment I was like, Mum, wake up Aydan, because he had fallen asleep. So it was still fine enough to say that. And then his head came out, and I was just like the biggest sigh of relief. I was like, oh, I can breathe. And it was just it was as soon as his head was out, I sat back a bit, I think, and I was like, oh my goodness, thank gosh. He was under the water, so I knew he was fine. And Mum was concerned. She kept thinking we've got to lift the baby straight out. She didn't say anything, but afterwards she was like, I kept telling myself, he's born in the water. His head can stay there. It's okay. We don't need to pull him out.
So good.
So she stood there, and then Aydan was there, and look, there's the baby's head. And then it was about a minute or maybe longer between his head and then the next contraction, and then his body came out. And then Paul's like, because I said I want him to catch him, and then when it happened, he was like, do you want me to catch him? I was like, yeah, I'm not moving, I can't pick him up. So Paul caught him and then passed him up to me, and then I sat back, and and then he was just looking at me, and then it was quiet, and then I was like, he's gonna cry, because I could tell he was gonna cry, and then he cried, screamed, and we were like, ah, and it was it was amazing.
Oh, wow, that is so cool. And so how long did you stay in the pool for?
That he was born at 4:30 or 4:25 or something. So I was in there I hopped in about 3, I think. So about an hour and a half later he was born, and then I wanted to stay in there for to birth the placenta. So I just had him on me. He was at my boob, but he wasn't really drinking. He was just hanging out. And then it got to about half an hour later, and the water was getting a little bit cool. I didn't want to hop out yet, so I was like, okay, let's cut the cord. You guys take the baby, and then I'll wait for the placenta. So about half an hour or 40 minutes later, we cut the cord. Paul took the baby. Mum, I had my post-birth bag, and it was also in case we went to the hospital, I had everything in there for me and baby post-birth. So she grabbed, in there I had some tinctures, so she made up some of those for the placenta release and blood loss or whatever. So she made up those, bought me the tinctures while I was in the pool just chatting, and Paul had the baby. And then 10 minutes later, or even less, the like one contraction, the placenta just came flying out.
Yeah.
It was super quick. So I was like, yay. So I had a shower after that.
Yeah.
And then climbed into bed.
Yeah. Into your own bed.
Yeah.
With your own sheets.
Yeah.
And the tinctures, did you get them from the doula, or how did you get them?
I went to Australia. I flew to Brisbane when I was about 32 or 34 weeks. And I had, my friend lives in Brisbane, and she had been collecting all, because you can't get, you can barely get anything delivered to New Caledonia. So I had bought a birth pool, the tinctures from Blissful Herbs, and a TENS machine and all the things, and I got them shipped to my friend's house. I went to Brisbane me and Aydan went to Brisbane for like 4 days or something, 5 days, and bought all the shopping back with me.
Wow.
Yeah, so everything I'd bought, in Australia pretty much, because I asked the doula, I was like, does anyone have a birth pool? And she's like, no, there's nothing. So I bought it all back with me from Australia.
Amazing. Wow. And so what was like what happened in like the days after he was born? Like did you have to like check in with the hospital, or like what happened?
So we knew that we would have to go and register his birth, which has to happen within 3 days.
Okay.
So we knew that could be the doula had said some people have trouble. It just really depends who you get on the day and how understanding or how knowledgeable they are about the system. So it was something we knew we had to plan for, but I didn't let it stress me out too much, because I was like, we're really not going to know until we turn up to do the paperwork. So we had to leave on day 3. We had to go out and tackle this. Prior to that, I'd barely left the bed, and it was just amazing. But we went out, we went to the town hall, or the council thing, to register the birth, and we're like, we had the baby at home. This is all in French. They don't speak English. Our French was not fantastic. The lady was lovely though. So she called the hospital and she was like, what do I do? Because we had nothing from a doctor or anything. And legally we didn't need anything from a doctor. And I was like, I'm not going to the hospital to get a bit of paper to take back and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But eventually she did it, and she was really kind. It just took a long time. Yeah. And then talking to the hospital, she said, they want you to come in just to check you and the baby out. And I was like, okay. And we were already at the house. We had actually locked our house keys inside the house, so we couldn't even get back inside our house. It was just this big day. We're like, oh my gosh. So, and I said to my partner, I said, all right, I've got the capacity today. Let's go and do this. I'm feeling okay. We can go. I feel fine. My baby's fine. Let's do this. So we went to the hospital, and they were like, what? The midwife was like, I've never heard of this before. She just couldn't believe that we'd had our baby at home. She was really shocked. And
I wonder how they think things happened a couple 100 years ago.
Well, I don't know. And because they have the Kanaks are the indigenous people to New Caledonia, and they live in tribes, and they live in really small towns, and they all live in community, but they all have to go to the city to birth. Even the ones that live on the outer islands have to go there from 37 weeks to birth. And I was like, it's wild. And that's only recent. They used to have a doctor on the islands, but now they all have to come to the city away from their family and support and stay there for a month and pay for accommodation. And it's just, it's crazy.
Atrocious.
It is.
My God.
Yeah. My doula's doing a lot of work to try and I don't know, to get birth back in the community, or just support these people to not have to go birth in the system if they don't want to. Because I thought initially, I was like, there's going to be definitely some elder women who can, or wise women who, could come and support me at home, because they must do it in their community. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, when you told me that you gave birth in New Caledonia, that's exactly what I had thought. I thought, surely this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I thought too. But so it's quite shocking, really.
Yeah. And so what did they have to say other than that? at the hospital?
Yes, so she was shocked, but she was like, "That's amazing." And like I was feeling really well. I felt like I had a small tear. She's like, "We want to check the baby and we'll check you." And then my partner's like, "Only if you're comfortable too. You don't have to do this, Stacey." And then midwife was like, "Oh yeah, only if you're okay with that." And I'd said, like, going there, I said, it depends how they treat us to how much I'm going to do. But she was nice. And I said, "Yeah, sure, you can check." Because I felt like I had a really small tear. Like I was going to get pulled to check. We just hadn't got around to it. Like it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't affecting me. And then she was like, "Oh, yeah, all good. Yeah, you have a really small graze." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, perfect." Like exactly where I felt it was.
Yeah.
And then she called the pediatrician for the baby. And that he wasn't on site, or there's like limited people where I live. They like fly in during the week or something. So he couldn't see the baby, but he was like, "The baby was born without medicine. We need to do all these tests." And they were like freaking out. And I was doing the heel prick, or here it's a hand prick test. And I said, "Well, if you're doing that anyway, I'm happy for you to do the other," because I hadn't done the GBS, and I was fine. I could tell my baby was fine. I was just like, if it makes you feel better, you're taking a little bit of blood, you can do that too. But it turns out they took like an extra 2 or 3 vials of blood, and I feel terrible for my little baby. I was like, I would have said no had I have known it wasn't like the same needle. So that was, I was like, oh, because they were all freaking out. All the midwives were like, "Oh, well done." Like, and they were trying to keep us there for ages. And then we're like, "We have to go pick up our son from school." Like, I was like, "We need to go." So we're trying to run out, and the midwife's coming with all these forms for referrals for me. And I'm like, we're trying to get out the door, and she's trying to shovel this paperwork into our hands. And she probably thinks that,
gosh.
It was just so funny. Like, like we just need to go.
Sounds like something from TV or something. Like I'm running out of the hospital chasing you, waving paper.
Yeah. It was a bit like that, but like, I felt so fine. Our baby was so fine. And they they're like, "How much did he weigh?" And I was like, "Well, we weighed him in the Thermomix like basket."
Oh, I've heard of that actually. Yeah.
And I was like, perfect, because we don't have scales in the house, like, you know. And so it was just a guesstimate, and I think he was like 200 grams less when they did him. And I was like, it's just like, I said, "He's fine, he's feeding fine, there's no worries." Like, and she was like, "Is breastfeeding okay?" And I was like, "Yeah," because I had fed my eldest up till he was almost 4, actually. Like, he stopped feeding just before I had this baby.
Amazing.
So like, it was really easy for me. My nipples were well conditioned, like it was no worries. And they were just like in shock, really. But yeah, so we did that. We got his birth certificate, which was the one big thing we were unsure about. And then we went to a pediatrician, like when he was a week old, and she was like the best health professional we encountered since we had been here. Like, she was really understood. She's like, "I can't find your paperwork." And my partner was like, "We had the baby at home." And she's like, "Oh, this is why it's not linked. Okay." And she's like, "I understand it's normal where you're from." And she was really understanding. And we didn't really tell anyone if we planned to do it, or we just like, "Oh yeah, everything was fine." So we stayed home. Like, we didn't really give too much away. And he'd put on like tons of weight, and he was doing amazing. And which I feel anyway, like I wasn't worried about anything. I was just going to keeping this, if I had to go. Yeah.
Wow, what a story. So if you were to have another baby, like wherever you are, give birth at home again, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, give birth at home. And I even said to my partner, I was like, "Would you do that all again, like just us?" Because initially, he was really hesitant about home birth with a midwife. And then just with education and like really trusting me, he came, and he was totally happy, and he thinks it's incredible that we free birthed our baby at home. And I said, "Would you do that again?" He's like, yeah, I'd be happy to do that again. Or if you want, we can hire a midwife. I would potentially hire a private midwife just for the antenatal care, like just for the more support perhaps. But it also, my baby's staring at me talking. It also depends. Like, I'm not opposed to going to hospital if something was happening in pregnancy, like out of the ordinary. It just, it really depends how everything's going. But if I had another pregnancy where I felt fine, my baby was fine, probably, definitely have it at home by ourselves
Yeah. Wow, what a story. That is very, very cool. And especially like two very different stories as well.
Yeah.
Has that changed like how you feel about yourself, do you think?
Just like even since my first son, like just understanding like the courses that I've done in matrescence and understanding what happens to us, like our brains literally change when we become mothers, and we are incredible. And so it just it just feels amazing. Like I really, so often we're told to not trust our intuition or we're led away from it. And my whole pregnancy, I really felt like I was going to have my baby at home even before I told people that. And I just knew he was fine. I knew I was fine. And even in labor, like my partner said, like I said to him, you've got to trust me that if something's not right, I will tell you. I will know if something's not right with me or the baby. And only at one point during the whole time, he said, is everything feeling okay, Stacey? And I said, yeah, everything's feeling perfect. Like this is just what we have to do to get our baby here.
Yeah, it's labor for a reason.
So it's completely changed just the education, and what I've shared with him, like completely changed his view as well. And like, birth is the only thing that we go to hospital for, that there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just, and my whole postpartum has been like amazing. My mum was here to support us. We did so much prep. We cooked so many meals, and it's just been really lovely. But it takes work as well, doesn't it? Like the first one you just go into and you're like, oh, just wing it, it'll be fine. And
like we're taught and raised to like have trust in doctors and medical professionals and the system, that if you're sick, you go to hospital and they'll fix you. Like we have amazing life-saving medicine available to us. But when you're pregnant, like that's not you're not ill, you're not sick. It's just a normal physiological process that's been that just that's I feel very sad for the people that live on New Caledonia.
I know.
Caledonia.
Me too. It's like a physiological birth is. So my friend here that I met when she was pregnant with her second, she accidentally had him at home. Like he came within 40 minutes. So she had him in her shower. And when she tells people that, they're like, what? And she's really about physiological birth, and it's just so unheard of here. But it's slowly like, she talks to other people and, says it's possible, and maybe slowly they'll make change. But it, like the doula that I met with, she wants to like go to Australia and see how Australians do it with private midwives and birth centres and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure really Australia is the best example, but when comparing it to New Caledonia, we obviously have better access to some things. In Victoria, for example, there's no birth centres. Pretty much if you want to have a birth at home, you have to shell out thousands of dollars for a private midwife, or if you somehow are lucky enough to get into and stay in one of the hospital home birth programs that are popping up.
Like in Kalgoorlie, I never even knew really about home birth, but there's no private midwives there. There's just the hospital, unless you're going to go 6 or 7 hours and stay there for however long you need to. Which kind of defeats the point, right? Because a lot of my friends just come back to Australia to have your baby, but it's a lot of money and time, and would my partner make it back there in time, like especially with like the housing crisis, like it just is too hard, and this is the right decision for us.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything that you wanted to add, anything that we've missed?
Like some of my friends are about to have their first babies or have had them, and they've done like so much education prior that I wish I even knew about with my first. So just I don't know, there's so many amazing resources out there. Educate yourself before you go into the system, or however you choose to birth. Make sure it's the right choice for you and your family.
I hope you've enjoyed listening to Stacey's amazing free birth story from New Caledonia. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that it was super empowering to hear how she navigated a system in another country whose languages she doesn't speak, in a birth culture so wildly different to even that in Australia. I have many more episodes to come, so don't forget to follow along by clicking follow on whatever podcast host you're listening to this on, or by following the Instagram, where you can also message me to share your birth at home story on the podcast. If you leave the podcast a review, that would also mean so much to me and to help get the word out about the podcast too. And finally, as always, I've left some show notes in the episode description, so please check them out.